Johannesburg. My name is Mlandu Kona. I am the head of group governance in the city of Johannesburg, and I am also the ethics champion in this organization. Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite you to rise and observe the South African national anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, it would be amiss of me on this Global Ethics Day not to ask you to observe a moment of silence for the person that is an embodiment of ethical leadership, good governance, excellence, and patriotism, the former Minister of Labor in Madiba's cabinet, the former Reserve Bank Governor during Begi's term, and the former Minister of Finance under the current President. That is Mr. Tito Mboweni. A moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. Before we get started, just a quick word about why we are here today. Global Ethics Day reminds us of the critical importance of doing the right thing, even when no one is watching, and that's integrity. This year's theme is about ethics empowered, which speaks to how ethics can become a driving force for positive change, not just in our personal conduct, but in the way we lead and serve others. This gathering is intended for us to reflect on the ethical principles that guide our actions. Now, to kick off our program, it is my pleasure to invite the Acting City Manager, Mr. Tsepo Makola, to give us the welcome and opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Program Director. As already introduced, my name is Tsepo Makola. I'm the Chief Operations Officer in the City of Johannesburg. but today my role is to represent the city manager who is away on council business. Let me first acknowledge the Speaker of Council, Councillor Mthembu, the Executive Mayor, Councillor Morero. Let me also acknowledge all the MMCs who are in the chamber or in the theatre, or acknowledge all councillors who are with us today. Let me also acknowledge our guest speaker from the DBSA, Dr. Vermaak, Professor Watt from the University of Johannesburg. Also acknowledge the Integrity Commissioner, Mema Shehu from the Provincial Legislature. Acknowledge Mr. Mavuso, our Gauteng Province Public Service Commissioner. Acknowledge all the executives in the city of Johannesburg and city officials who are with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Maybe also acknowledge our junior mayor, Mr. Malekani, and our junior speaker, Dlamini. It is indeed my great pleasure, Honorable Speaker, to welcome all of us to this important event as we gather to commemorate Global Ethics Day here in the city of Johannesburg. This day offers us a chance to reflect on and reaffirm our shared commitment to ethical leadership, transparency, and integrity, which are at the heart of the work that we do as public servants. However, it is important that as we commemorate the Global Ethics Day, we inculcate ethical leadership as part of the work that we do on a daily basis, not just a compliance process that we must engage in as the city of Johannesburg. Mr. Mayor, I can announce that a couple of weeks ago, we indeed engaged in a workshop that included all the spheres of government, including the Hawks, NPA, and all the senior leadership, where we pledged our own support to ensuring that ethical leadership becomes part and parcel of the city's culture and leadership. As we celebrate Global Ethics Day, we are reminded of the essential role of each of us that we must play in upholding these principles. In a vibrant and dynamic metropolis such as the city of Johannesburg, challenges are inevitable. But as we resolve those challenges, they must be driven by an ethical leadership. And those decisions themselves must also be ethical. This event serves as a powerful reminder of the values that we must hold firm as the leadership, both in the political and in the administration, political executive oversight and the administration. We must be honest in every work that we do. We must be accountable, and we must be committed to delivering for the citizens and the communities that we serve on a daily basis. Ethical governance forms the backbone of trust between us and the communities we serve. The standards we set here today will not only shape our own actions, but also leave a lasting legacy for future generations of the city leadership and employees within the city of Johannesburg. The pledges we will sign today are not merely a symbolic gesture. As I've indicated, we've already had a workshop, we've already appointed committees that will deal with ethical leadership on a monthly basis as part of the leadership. And I'm happy to announce that as my position as the coup, I've accepted the nomination, Mr. Mayor, and will indeed ensure that I'm part of the committee to inculcate ethical leadership in the city of Johannesburg. The pledges we are signing today are not merely a symbolic gesture, they are our public commitment to promoting a transparent, fair, and responsible government that truly serves its people. As I welcome you, let me acknowledge Group Governance and the Integrity Commissioner's Office for their collaboration in making this event a success. This demonstrates the commitment of both arms of government, oversight, the executive, and of course the administration. This collaboration will ensure that the City of Johannesburg becomes a leader in ethical governance, and these efforts will undoubtedly have a lasting impact on all of us. Mr. Mayor, allow me to slightly deviate from this speech that has been prepared and really share a personal story that is part of my journey in the academics. When I was doing my master's in business administration, one of the programs was ethics, with a situation where the lecturer who was presenting ethics in a way sort of had a personal experience in government, and I think when government changed, as opposed to him giving us a lecture about ethics, he essentially started telling us about how government ill-treated him when the changes happened, and I think being that student, I then raised my hand to say, I think you are deviating from the initial script of teaching us ethics, because if we are going to listen to how you are unhappy, how you were removed from government, and how this government is not going to pass, I don't think that is ethical. Needless to say, I had to rewrite the subject, Mr. Mayor. Exam. I think the lecturer took offense and, of course, used his power to sort of reduce my marks a bit. But at the end, I requested for a remark, which was approved. But I thought maybe doing a remark may not help. Maybe let me retake the exam. The outcome was positive, Mr. Mayor, and I did qualify. But I think it's a very relevant story given the work that we are doing. So ethical leadership means doing the right thing every day, even if you feel that it may not gel with your personal view, but you have to be ethical at all times and be fair across. So once again, Mr. Mayor, I do welcome this important historic event in the city of Johannesburg. And on behalf of the city manager and the administration, we are committed to ensuring that we instill ethical leadership in the city. Thank you very much.
You know, coups are the folks who make sure everything runs smoothly like clockwork, from fixing things behind the scenes to ensuring the ship doesn't sink. And if things ever go wrong, well, we just say, don't worry, the coup will handle it. Thank you very much, Mr. Makola. Really appreciate it. There's going to be a slight change to the program. I would like to invite the former minister, I think, Minister of Human Settlements, Intelligence, and Defense, one of the stalwarts of the liberation struggle in our country. As young people, we enjoy that freedom today because of the people like her. Upon wins, Ms. Utaps, may I invite Ms. Lindiwe Sisulu. Kamel.
I'd like to address myself to the mayor, the speaker, the executive mayor, councillors who are here present, senior bureaucrats who are here with us, and members of the public. Thank you for inviting me to this auspicious day to address you on a matter that I've been very passionate about. I've been a minister for a very long time, and I got the opportunity when I was Minister of Public Service to infuse into the Public Service, Public Administration Bill something that I felt very strongly about. Most of us come from a history of struggle, a history that has intended to change the course of South Africa and bring into our mainstream ethical governance, ethical behavior, and all of those things that we fought against. So when I was Minister of Public Administration, I took it upon myself to try and infuse in our legislation something about ethics. And I must tell you, this was the most difficult time of my life. I'd been a Minister of Intelligence, Defense, you name it. But when I got to public service, the brakes were put on. I was not going to be able to do what I needed to do. There was an anti-corruption section there, etc. So I thought, okay, the only way that I'd be able to get through and make a permanent mark on what we need to be, because we fought very hard for this kind of government that we have now, I decided that I would drop a crucial section of the legislation so that I can get other parts of the legislation. I removed the word corruption because that was a very contentious matter in the legislation. So I had to sit up all night and work out what's more important for me, an overall integrity-driven government or an anti-corruption government. And I thought, well, there is no way in which we could talk about integrity and not talk about anti-corruption. So I was willing to remove the word corruption. So if you look at the Public Service Bill, you will find a big loophole on the issue of corruption, because I don't think we were going to get very far with that. But coming here today, I'm very glad to address you on a matter that is absolutely essential to all of us. Ethics and good governance is what we fought for. And coming here and being asked to deal with this matter, I feel particularly privileged. I was in my backyard digging up some spinach when I was told that there would be a meeting here. So I left everything to come here to say I was honored to be invited. I'm honored to be here. And I'm hoping that this will be broadcast all over the country so that we're able to hold on to something that puts us together. Many lives were lost for us to be in this government. Those lives were not lost for any of the things that sometimes we find in the newspaper. But if we commit ourselves to an ethical government, it will take us one step into what it is that we fought for to bring the kind of government that we have today. Mayor, your executive, committee, and everybody who's here, thank you very much for inviting me. I feel very honored to be associated with this day. I will feel very honored when the citizens of Johannesburg feel that there is integrity in everything we do, because we will have worked towards making sure that what we fought for is indeed in the interest of good governance, integrity, and what is good for everybody else. Thank you very much, Mayor. Mayor, my home is just down the road from your home, so when you go home, please tell them that we are talking good ethics, which means that they will behave on the street properly. Because ethics is as broad as all of that. It's not about government, it is also about how the people that we serve respond to us as well. If we show an ethical conduct, they will respond in kind. Thank you very much for inviting me here. I didn't prepare the speech, but I felt that this is exactly what I would have wanted to see in my time. I'm seeing it after my sunset, and it is still good enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kamela. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is Advocate Ndebe, who is the city's new Integrity Commissioner. While she may be new to this role, she's certainly not new to the world of ethics, integrity management, and compliance. Advocate Ndebe is an experienced civil servant who has dedicated her career to upholding high standards of integrity and ethical governance. We are fortunate to have her expertise and commitment here in the city of Johannesburg. Welcome, Advocate Ndebe. Please kindly lead us in a discussion on the significance of Global Ethics Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. My greetings to the Executive Mayor, the Speaker, the Chief Operations Officer, the former Minister, the guest speaker, and the speakers that are here. Most importantly, the citizens of the city and the Junior Council. I am so excited that today, as we mark this shift or undertaking by the city, that we also have the executive and the speaker of the Junior Council, because that's where it starts. It starts with the young people. And if ethical leadership is not inculcated in the conduct of the young people, then we are not going anywhere, either as a country or as the city. I am going to talk here about the significance of the Ethics Day in relation to the event. I don't know. I'm going to first deal with the background, why we are today commemorating this day as a global day. We're not doing this for fun, but we are doing it because it has an ethical embedment. 10 years ago, the Carnegie Council decided to establish an ethics committee which deal with ethics internationally. They brought together citizens, business, academics, and everybody that matters together in order to craft ethical conduct or to activate ethical conduct. And they then decided that on the third Wednesday of every October, they will then commemorate this day because it is a very significant day. That's where leaders are groomed from an ethical perspective, and that's where all ethical issues across the global space are discussed. Now, what is it that is relevant for the city? As a city, we take serious significance on this day. And we are saying, the Chief Operations Officer says, preceding this event that we are commemorating, we had training or workshops that was attended by all spheres of government in order to sensitize everybody that ethics, as much as it's taken out of context from certain angles, but it is the core of our being. Ethics is not about a code that you sign, but ethics is about what is within you as a human being, what you believe is right and what you believe is wrong. And that's an aspect that you cannot enforce to a person. That is why we then decided to say that let us be led by the leaders to inculcate that culture of saying we are servant leaders that are going to be able to do this thing in the right way. Now, globally, we are so busy and entangled in hurrying up things because we've got timelines. Everything is about deadlines, to an extent that we lose our ethical and moral behavior because we are chasing timelines. The second challenge is the fact that now we move and focus on technology, without comprehending something. You press the button. Later on, you comprehend. You see this in social media. Those that like social media, they just press and say something. Afterwards, they then realize that, I was not supposed to do this. This has these implications, this and that. So we do not comprehend because we are in a fast mode. So this affects decision because ordinarily our decisions have great impact to ourselves as individually. But most importantly, these decisions that we take, executive, mayor, and speaker, they do not impact on us. They impact to the fiber of the society. So we need to pause when we take these decisions and ask ourselves certain questions. That then takes us to why is it that is important that you ask certain questions before you take a decision? Because any decision that you take, it must be nurturing trust in the communities. And Speaker, that's why we are here. We are saying to the citizens, on this International Day, which is the Global Ethics Day, citizens of Johannesburg with responsibilities. And that trust, we are not taking it lightly. We are taking this trust in a very serious manner. And we are going to nurture that trust so that, again, you believe in us as the city thing, no matter what. The second critical principle is that we need to be caregivers. As we act ethically, we need to be caregivers. In what way? By fostering social responsibility. It is important to foster social responsibility. We are here, we are earning, we are working, but who are we responsible to? Does the granny in Soweto knows that the city, in an event that somebody dies and they do not have money to bury the person, the city, through the Speaker's office, has assistance that can be provided. We need to be caring. The other day, I saw the Speaker going to visit the families of those that their houses burnt, and those children in Soweto that they ate food that was poisonous. So that's the culture that we need to embrace. As we do all these things, it is pertinent that we also balance and mitigate the risks and the harms. We operate within an ambit of the law in providing social responsibility. We should not exceed the boundaries that we are operating in. So, policy prescript and policy prescripts and laws that are governing the country, that are governing the municipality, they are also important. Can I correct a mistake that I have made, an oversight? That I acknowledge the presence of the chief whip of the city and the chair of chairs of the city and all the councillors here. I am acknowledging the mistake because that's ethical to do it. Now, the other pertinent issue is equipping tomorrow's leaders. That's why I said I am very excited that the Youth Council is here, because we need to capacitate them. But capacitation also for everybody that plays a role. We should not be reactive as we are engaging in this journey. We should always be proactive. Some of these things, it's things that we can preempt, and capacity is involved. Hence the workshops, the engagements, we are capacitating. Now, why is this ethics important? Because as a collective, you know, we all have moral choice. There are certain behavioral aspects, I think Professor Vorti will be talking into that, that are expected. We say, from a legal perspective, we say, what would a reasonable man have done under the circumstances? So there are those expectations. You are saying you have everything that you have an understanding. Now, as a reasonable man, how would you have reacted in this particular manner? When we look at the founding aspects of these morals, primarily we should look at trust. That's why we say Joburg citizens, Joburg employees, Joburg councillors, we are activating the trust element because it is important. Ethics are about you without being monitored or looked at. Your own conscience, in your own conscience, doing the right thing. We also have to look into justice, how we progress and ensure that we provide ethical leadership. Now, if we take these principles to heart, we are not only going to be enriching ourselves, but we will move forward to have a sustainable city of Johannesburg, a sustainable country, a sustainable global atmosphere. And we will be able to set precedence in an ethical way and strive to advance harmony, peace, and economical stability. As I conclude, Program Director, I want to close with a quote from Parker J. Palmer. I quote, "It takes courage to join soul and role in organizations that make it unsafe to show up with integrity and act in alignment with it. But when we find that courage, our lives become more whole, our work reaches deeper, and the people we serve are better served, and in ways larger and smaller, the world becomes a better place." I thank you.
Thank you, Advocate Ndebe, for the inspiring words. As we move forward, it is important to note that today's event doesn't not only set the standards for ethical leadership, but also highlights the promising collaboration between the legislature represented by the Integrity Commission and the executive through the Ethics Office. We are truly looking forward to this partnership, which will strengthen our collective commitment to ethical governance. With that in mind, it is my pleasure to invite Mr. Mavuso, who is the Gauteng Province Public Service Commissioner, and he will be addressing us on the importance of ethics in the public service, which is a critical foundation for building trust and accountability in government. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Mr. Mavuso.
A very good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen. But firstly, I need to acknowledge the Executive Mayor, the Speaker of Council, the Integrity Commissioner, both from the legislature and the city, the former minister. It's quite a pleasure seeing you here. The Chief Whip, I do believe that the Chair of Chairs is also here, and all councillors present. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my singular pleasure to be here today for a number of reasons. Firstly, it's like a sense of déjà vu. You know, as a former employee of the city of Johannesburg, I served here for 11 years. But equally so, I'm a resident of the city of Johannesburg. So these two roles are quite important, and I do believe that they indicate my commitment to the city. Be that as it may, it's actually important to indicate that what the former minister raised, particularly around that word which sounded like a swear word, corruption. We cannot run away from it. It's a harsh reality that we have to contend with, because if indeed we want to put our country on a much more better pedestal, socially, economically, and otherwise, we have to deal with this monster. It has to be slain, whether we like it or not. I must indicate, if we could go to my slide, that it's actually divided into a number of parts. Firstly, I will raise the mandate of the Public Service Commission and talk about what is it that is a capable, ethical, and developmental state, the ethical goals outlined in the medium-term development plan, the ethical dimensions of professionalization and professionalism in the public service, ethical leadership, policy framework on ethics management, perceptions on ethics strategies, strategies to foster ethical culture in the public administration, and then, of course, come to the conclusion. I'm sure the place is getting a little warmer, and my mouth is now beginning to be parched, and I'm sure I would really require to drown the butterflies which are in my stomach, if you don't mind. May I have water, please? But the crux of the matter, especially talking about the mandate, the Public Service Commission is established in terms of Chapter 10 of the Constitution to provide oversight and promote the constitutional values and principles over the public service. Now, there could have been an oversight, but in the fullness of time, there has been a realization that we cannot really confine this role to the public service. It has to be expanded to the broader public administration, and I'll illustrate how that comes into being. And I'm sure the former minister will really appreciate the fact that we've moved from where it was to where we are heading to. As a matter of course, the Public Service Commission conducts research, investigations, inspections, as well as advocacy in the interest of maintaining an effective and efficient public administration through cultivating sound public administration, human resource management, labor relations, and governance practices. And therefore, the Public Service Commission is accountable to Parliament and to the legislatures, because there ought to be 14 commissioners in total, 5 appointed by Parliament and the 9 from the different provinces. So each one of those will account to where they have been appointed. But worthy of note is the importance and significance of building an ethical and developmental state. When looking to totality, a capable state has the required human capabilities, institutional capacity, service processes, and technological platforms to deliver on the National Development Plan through a social contract with the people, because that's a very important aspect. The second one, of course, relates to ethical state. What do we mean by an ethical state? An ethical state is driven by the constitutional values and principles of public administration and the rule of law focused on the progressive realization of the socio-economic rights, social justice, as outlined in the Bill of Rights. The third component would be the nature of a developmental state, which, for all intents and purposes, should aim to meet the people's needs through interventionist, developmental, and participatory public administration. This entails building a state that is driven by the public interest and not individual or sectional interests. And it's more the reason why the Medium-Term Development Plan 2024 to 2029 has, especially within its priority number 3, it emphasizes the need for building a capable, ethical, and developmental state, and the finalization of the Public Service Amendment Bill, which is a very important part, will then result in the transformation that Honorable former Minister actually indicated. And the Public Service Commission Amendment Bill will also deal with matters that are going to stretch to all 3 spheres, including local government. In other words, the Public Service Commission will also have a responsibility to deal with matters that would be happening within the sphere of local government in going forward. That bill is before Parliament. We are hoping that it will be passed by the end of this year. And what that entails is that even state-owned entities, provincial, local, and national, will fall within the ambit of the Public Service Commission to be able to do the things that I actually mentioned of having oversight over those. These, we believe, will realize the goals of the priority number 3 of the MTDP. Now, what are the ethical goals outlined in the Medium-Term Development Plan? Firstly, the MTDP provides for the following in achieving the government priority 3. 1, the implementation of the national framework towards the professionalization of the public sector and establish the office of the head of the public administration to manage career incidents and oversight of the senior management levels. In other words, what we call the hopper will then be in charge of the entire public service and the incidental matters there too, which means the appointment of the city manager, CFOs, DGs, DDGs, etc., will fall within that ambit. Yeah, it's coming. It's a harsh reality that we have to contend with, but we're soldiering on to make sure that it is translated into concrete reality. It will standardize and professionalize the appointment of municipal managers, the chief financial officers, and ensure independent regulation and oversight of the appointment process. In other words, it will be a situation whereby a panel will be established, and as and when there's a need to appoint individuals, they will be taken from the panel of experts who have an understanding of the different roles which are going to be performed. They will be the ones who will deal with the interviewing process. In other words, the whole question of political interference will be taken out of that particular basket to be able to make sure that it's professionals who are appointed into these respective responsibilities. It also strengthens the public procurement system in line with the Public Procurement Act for efficiency and effectiveness and to stimulate demand. But the ethical goals which are outlined in the MDP, for, amongst others, to continue to strengthen and build the capacity of prosecution and law enforcement agencies to effectively combat crime, including corruption. You might have read in the newspapers today that a number of developments have unfolded, and it actually symbolizes the fact that the seriousness in dealing with corruption as and when it rears its ugly head. To strengthen the whistleblower protection through stronger legislation and implement the national anti-corruption strategy. To strengthen accountability and consequence management in the public service and conduct lifestyle audits for elected officials and senior public servants. One of the things that the Public Service Commission does currently is to be able to look into the lifestyles of the different public servants. In other words, be able to capture all the information relating to their residence, their properties, movable and immovable, and be able to find out where their directorships and other outside of employment remuneration happens, and to what extent this is being influences decision-making within government. And I'm happy to appreciate that the Integrity Commission has actually listed some of these functions in what they'll be doing, especially for elected officials. Also, to strengthen the capacity of the Hawks to tackle organized crime, combat infrastructure crime by securing electricity, logistics, in other words, your rail system, etc., water and other critical infrastructure. And we know what has happened to the city. It has been ravaged by what I call economic crime. And in fact, it should really be considered to be treason to be able to destroy such critical infrastructure. One of the constitutional values and principles as enshrined in Chapter 10, Section 195 of the Constitution, is the promotion of a high standard of professional ethics in the public sector. And the Public Service Commission has thus a constitutional obligation to promote the constitutional values and principles as part and parcel of its mandate. And the ethical conduct of public servants is a fundamental component of professionalization and professionalism. If one was to look from a systemic approach, it is not adequate to address these factors after appointment of public servants. Ethical conduct needs to be considered during the recruitment process with specific reference to the following. One, how are the new recruits or employees tested to ensure a proper foundation in ethics-based decision-making? Two, if testing is conducted, is it oral, computer-based, written, or otherwise? Three, does there appear to be a relationship between the age of recruits, new employees, and ethical violations? Because when you look into the angle that is created, if you look into that square or that circle, it has these components around the profession itself, which really relates to the individual. In other words, you were employed to perform a particular responsibility, but you need to belong to a particular group of professionals so that if any misdemeanor or misconduct does appear, whether you're a lawyer and all that, the professional body has a role to play to make sure that you either get disbarred or otherwise. In other words, you will not ever be involved in any matter that relates to your profession, in any manner that would relate to whether it is in a municipality, in a province, at a national level, or in the SOEs. It also deals with professionalism. In other words, how is your conduct and behavior with respect to the profession that you have? You may be having an MBA, and there might have been someone who created problems for you as COO, but truth be told, if you are a professional in your career, you know what is it that needs to be done. And finally, the essence of professionalization of the public sector is a very crucial aspect, so that we have people who are fit for purpose, who are appointed based on merit and not on affinity or friendships and what have you. If we do that, we believe that it is a very good step in the right direction. And through its visionary stance on, as envisaged, an ethical and capable public sector in the service of the people will really create a game changer. Currently, the National School of Government has developed ethics courses in the public services, part and parcel of ensuring that high standards of professional ethics is upheld. One of the considerations is that anyone who will be entering the public service, meaning in the 3 spheres, will have to go through the National School of Government. In the first instance, there's the Nugela program, which is now compulsory, and it is going to become compulsory once the bill has been passed, starting from next year. When you talk about recruitment and selection, indeed, meritocratic appointments based on credible assessments of the potential candidates becomes a very crucial aspect. It's not about the paper that you have, because it may well be that you might have gotten somewhere and you might have paid a particular premium to get it. But you will have to be tested accordingly whether you are fit for purpose. And the induction and onboarding would be conducted by the NSG to make sure that there's compulsory induction, and most importantly, that credible performance assessments will then have to take place as and when you are in the process or in the system, so that you can then be measured on the basis of what you've done, because you can't measure what you can't see. And of course, the continuing learning and professional development becomes a very crucial aspect that we believe will be able to enhance the capacity and the capability of the kind of public servants we'll be having. But we have an issue which I do believe one of my colleagues is going to talk about: ethical leadership. Some scholars define ethical leadership as follows: it is the ability to influence people to act in accordance with principles of good governance. It may not be sufficient, but we do believe that this will have to be not embellished, but to be improved even further, so that it can be able to have punches. And all public servants to be reckoned as ethical leaders and should advance the public interest of service to the nation ahead of power and self-enrichment and personal aggrandizement. Leaders to be courageous and resilient to build institutions that are deeply embedded with ethical values. As leaders, these are some of the aspirational values that I've actually indicated. I don't have to go through all this because I'm sure we're quite familiar with all of them. But let's deal with the policy framework on ethics management. There are 3 pieces of legislation which are currently before Parliament. The first one, I think the former minister actually alluded to, the Public Administration Management Act. It has been amended further to make sure that it covers the 3 spheres, and that everyone who is falling within the public administration in its broadest context, meaning your SOEs and municipalities, etc., will be part and parcel of that. Equally important, of course, is the fact that the Public Service Act has again been amended further to make sure that there's that coordination of all that has been done, and I've included the Public Service Commission Amendment Bill, which also ensures that we can be able to operate within the different spheres, the 3 spheres of government. But the PAMA provides for technical assistance and support to institutions in all spheres of government regarding the management of ethics, integrity, and disciplinary matters relating to misconduct in the public administration, development of the norms and standards of integrity, ethics, conduct, and discipline in the public administration. Also to strengthen government oversight of ethics, integrity, and discipline, and when necessary, in cases where systemic weaknesses are identified, to intervene, promotion and enhancement of good ethics and integrity within the public administration. Equally important would be the National Anti-Corruption Strategy. The 2020-2030 framework provides a framework and action plan for the country as a whole and seeks to create a society which, 1, the government's administrative and procurement processes are reinforced to allow for greater monitoring, accountability, and transparency. And the public is educated about what constitutes corruption and empowered to respond where and when it is noted. We know about the construction mafias and what havoc they've created throughout the country, and of course the extortion that has been going about, which is an act of corruption by its very nature. The public and whistleblowers are encouraged to report corruption, are supported and adequately protected when doing so. This brings to light the passing on of Babita Deokaran, which was quite an unfortunate situation because there was no protection for her as a whistleblower. We do believe that the current legislation, which is now being reformulated, will be able to create a measure of support that is much more discernible to make sure that whistleblowers become truly protected and do not fall foul to those whose intentions are to eliminate them. The business sector and civil society organizations operate in a value-driven manner and are held accountable for corruption practices. There's a culture of zero tolerance towards corruption in any sector and full accountability for those involved in corruption. And finally, the National Anti-Corruption Advisory Council, which has been established, plays a crucial role in coordinating and providing strategic advice on anti-corruption initiatives. It has its own pillars. I think there are 6 pillars which have been articulated and outlined, but I can just quickly summarize to indicate that, amongst others, it requires the participation of the citizenry. Because without people, whatever plans you may be having can never really come to fruition. You need and require that mobilization and encourage active citizenry, whistleblowing, integrity, and transparency. And number 2, there ought to be transparency and accountability in governance systems. In other words, when you enhance governance, oversight and accountability in organizations becomes a very crucial cog in the process. The third one would be the protection of sectors most vulnerable to corruption. In other words, protecting vulnerable sectors that are most prone to corruption, as we know, the sectors. For example, we've seen what is happening in the road constructions, in the building industry, etc. And the professional and skilled workforce is what is required. Because in most instances, when you have people who are capable and able, people who have been appointed on merit, that can assist in advancing the professionalization of employees to optimize their contribution to create a corrupt-free workplace. And a culture of reporting and whistleblowing, as I said, and strengthening anti-corruption agencies throughout. Now, when one looks into how the ethics strategies are being handled at a global level, there's an agency called Transparency International. I happen to have been a chairperson of the South African chapter for about 5 years in the 90s, when I was much younger, quite handsome, but now I don't have hair and what have you. The importance thereof is to be able to look into, amongst others, the corruption propensity index. What is it that makes people to have that appetite for corruption? And how do you deal with those matters as and when it comes about? And of course, the other point, of course, is the global perception index, which normally creates a ranking and scoring of different countries. I'm saddened to mention that our country is now rated at number 83 out of 180 countries. And I think it's important to be able to to hurry very fast in making sure that we are moved away from that and be able to move into the higher levels, especially within the top 10. If that could be achieved, I think it is possible, for as long as there's a mind change, a paradigm shift, and I think there's the will. Where there's a will, there's always a way. And various surveys inside the country reflect negative sentiments on government's efforts to win the battle against corruption. We know what is happening. There's always victimization, killing of whistleblowers, low success rate in the enforcement against the perpetrators, service delivery failures, and some of the indicators used to reflect on failures to achieve ethical culture in the public administration as a whole. It's important to be able to deal with strategies, in other words, strategies that will foster ethical culture in the public administration. The Public Service Commission has embarked on the following as a matter of urgency: strengthening its policies to realize the desirable impact, issuing of guides and circulars, in other words, dealing with unlawful instructions, hosting seminars on ethical leadership, ensuring the successful implementation of the professionalization framework in the public administration, and development programs in training the public servants in constitutional values and principles. One of the projects that we had to embark upon immediately after the elections was to be able to strengthen the whole question of the political and administrative interface. Because more often than not, tensions normally happen at that particular level. There may be instances whereby a minister might have appointed a particular head of department or DG, but in the fullness of time, relations sour for whatever reason. And that in itself can have a very negative impact on to governance and how departments or a department is being run. And we do believe that that situation will have to be managed differently. The advent of the government of national unity actually helped us to accelerate the process of dealing with that interface, so that it should not be that I want my person because he comes from my party or whatever that may be. But it is about the ability, the capacity, the capability, and the merit that that person carries, without necessarily using what I may call a Skopskit and donor kind of approach and removing people because of their political persuasions. I'm being intimidated that I have to come to a closure, but this intimidation is not going to last, because I'm just about to conclude. Just to indicate that the Public Service Commission holds a firm view that the small gains in promoting ethical culture will assist in turning around the unacceptable behaviors in the public administration. And to that end, we do believe that this is a battle that we dare not lose. It's a battle that we dare not fail in, but we really have to make sure that we win this battle. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mavuso, for that insightful presentation. And I'm sorry for intimidating you. Clearly, ethics in public service is the backbone of trust and governance. And your message has set a high bar for all of us. Now, our next speaker is Ms. Koko Mashiho, who is the Integrity Commissioner at the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. She will be talking to us about the role of the Integrity Commissioners in driving ethical leadership. But before I hand over to her, let me just say this. If there's one thing I've learned about Integrity Commissioners, it is that they never let you forget your promises. It reminds me of the saying, a promise made is a debt unpaid. So let us be prepared for some thoughtful, provoking insights and maybe a few reminders about the ethics pledges we are about to make. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Mashiho to the stage. She has less than 20 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, the Youth League, they do that all the time. May I just indicate that when the invitation came, it did not have any time frames. So it meant that I have the liberty of talking. But I will be ethical. Yes, thank you very much, Program Director. Let me acknowledge the Executive Mayor, Tate Morero, and the Speaker of Council in absentia, the Integrity Commissioner. Mercy Sule has left, the Chair of Chairs, the the Chief Whip, all councillors present, the Commissioner, my former colleague, and my brother, and all the officials of the City of Johannesburg. I've already been introduced, and just in the interest of time, I will go through my presentation, if it's okay. The outline of the presentation, ladies and gentlemen, I'll go through the appointment of the Integrity Commissioner briefly, functions of the Integrity Commissioner, which are mostly similar to what we have here. And in the main, as you probably are aware, that the main role of the Integrity Commissioner is to make sure that the members of the provincial legislature their behavior conforms to that of the code, and they behave ethically. So I will briefly talk to the Code of Conduct for MPLs, general obligations for ethical conduct, breaches of the code, penalties, what is meant by ethics, defining ethical behavior. I think Tate Mavuso touched on that. Ethical leadership, how to inculcate a culture of ethical conduct in government institutions, and the COO spoke to that. Effecting ethical leadership conclusion. I think most of the issues are overlapping, so I'll just run through that. And maybe it's important, Program Director, to indicate that before I came here, I was at the SIU offices. The Integrity Commissioner, myself, I was signing a memorandum of understanding with the SIU. We are collaborating on matters of ethics, integrity, and also on other matters that relate to our various mandates. So it's a pleasure to have, the SIU as a partner in fighting corruption. Also, we have a memorandum of understanding with the Public Service Commission, and obviously we'll follow up on that issue of lifestyle audits. I think it's an interest to many. We were asked that also at the SIU, whether as the Integrity Commission we conduct lifestyle audits. The Code for members of the GPL provides for the appointment of the Integrity Commissioner. The Speaker calls for nominations of persons from members of the public to fill in the position, and the requirements for the position of an IC obviously would be integrity and honesty, knowledge of law, public policy, politics, and socio-economic issues. I think the Integrity Commissioner spoke a lot about the social responsibility that is expected. You have to be non-partisan because you deal with all political parties. You need to act independently and also impartially. The rules state that the Speaker, after consultation with the leaders of the parties represented in the legislature, shall appoint a person to be the IC, but the convention has that a multi-party panel is put together, and after the interview, they make a recommendation to the House, and the House adopts a two-thirds majority adopts the appointment of the Integrity Commissioner. The IC is appointed for a 5-year term, and the IC may not remain in office for 2 terms, 5 years, yes. Functions of the Integrity Commissioner. In summary, the functions of the IC are to promote and ensure the implementation of the code for members, to undertake investigations. These investigations are upon receipt of a complaint or on own accord. To keep a register of members' interests. Members declare to the commission, to the IC, and we keep and maintain a register of members' interest. After they have declared, we publish the register and we do what we call a scrutiny. A scrutiny will be a dipstick. We do a sample from the members, and then we check with the CIPC whether the members have declared everything that they said they own, the properties, the farms, everything that relates to their financial interests. And if not everything that has been declared, we have a discussion with them, because one of the responsibilities of the IC is to advise and counsel members. And also, lastly, to provide capacity building sessions, orientation workshops for members, because the ethics is something that is not, we never arrive, We always need to remind ourselves, what is it, how is it that we are expected to act. The Code of Conduct for MPLs is located in the Standing Rules of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature as Annexure 1. The code outlines the minimum ethical standards of behavior that South Africans, we keep on talking about the Gauteng citizens, that South Africans are expecting of their elected representatives, including upholding propriety, integrity, and ethical values in their conduct. I think as elected members, voters entrust a lot in you. The decisions that elected members make are very important, and therefore it's important for them to be regarded as citizens that have integrity, citizens that are honest, citizens that will act fairly, when they look at programs of their communities. It serves as a code of good practice. It provides the legislature with a set of principles to guide the conduct of members in their capacity as public representatives when they execute their mandate, obviously. This is selflessness. They don't act for their own interest. They act in the public interest all the time. Integrity, accountability, they account to who? They account to the citizens who voted for them. And the members of the executive account to the legislature. And they need to be open, they need to be honest, they need to be ethical, and in the communities, they have to show that they are effective leaders. It seeks to regulate conflicts of interest. As members of the legislature, they are not expected to do business with government, but where they have interest, we are able to advise them if that interest is going to tamper with their functions as members of the legislature. The code also prescribes the minimum standards of disclosure and provides for the establishment of a register for interest for members. General obligations in terms of ethical conduct. The code obliges members to, at all times in the exercise of their duties, to not willfully mislead the legislature to which they are accountable. There is question time, I think Tuesdays in the legislature. and members of the executive get to be asked questions, and it is important in them answering those questions to be honest and truthful. Where it is that they are lacking, they need to indicate to the citizens, because the citizens would be watching, and explain where it is it that they are not able to implement programs that they've adopted, and also to be accountable on how they spend the public money. To not act in a way that is inconsistent with their positions as elected representatives. When acting in their public representative capacity, not to take any decision or influences to gain financial or other material benefit for the members of their families or their friends. That is why we always talk about acting in the public interest. To exercise their duties and conduct themselves with dignity and integrity appropriate to their office. I think, Speaker, you always talk about the decorum of the House, of the Council. So this is what we are talking about. You know, I think it's disheartening as a citizen to be watching members heckling, you know, not giving each other an opportunity to talk. When the MEC talks, everybody is talking. You know, that is not in keeping with the dignity and the quorum of the House. Not place themselves under financial or other obligations to outside individuals, organizations that might improperly influence the performance of their duties. Not to make decisions on merit in carrying out public duties, including appointments, awarding contracts. I think this is what the Commissioner is talking about when you spoke about the head of public administration, that you want to take this away from the politicians so that, you know, technocrats, professionals, you know, technicians are the ones that deal with those appointments, starting from the recruitment process. Declare any private interest relating to their official duties in the register of members' interest. Take steps to resolve any conflict of interest, perceived or actual, that may arise in a manner that protects and is in the public interest. Breaches of the code. A member breaches the code if the member contravenes or fails to comply with the requirements of the provisions for disclosing interests. When you don't disclose everything that you own, it's a breach. When disclosing registrable interests willfully or is grossly negligently, provides the Integrity Commissioner with incorrect or misleading details. Receives any financial benefit arising from any conflict of interest. Contravenes the following clauses as set out in the relevant sections of this code, namely the general obligations, the provisions relating to prohibited business activity, or instances relating to failure by a member to comply with the provisions relating to remunerated employment outside the legislature. Members of the legislature are by law or by the code not allowed to receive any remuneration outside their employment. In the event they do, they need to get permission from their political parties, and that must be in writing. That letter is submitted to the IC, and I scrutinize the letter. I have a discussion with the political party if it's necessary, because in the legislature there is a chief whip who is responsible for the members of their political parties. I'll have a discussion with the member, and when everything is above board, then that letter gets presented to the Committee of Privileges and Ethics, which is the committee that I report to, and that gets tabled in the legislature, and it's in the ATC. The reasons for this is that when a member of the public complains, or the members of the media complains about a certain member having business interests, you know, receiving remuneration outside the public, and they come to us, we are able to say, we are aware that member has declared. So it's very, very important for the members to declare fully. Penalties. The Integrity Commissioner may recommend to the committee the imposition of one or more of the following penalties where it has been found that a member has breached a provision of this code. That can be a reprimand, that can be a fine not exceeding the value or allowance for a period not exceeding 15 days, a reduction of remuneration or allowance for a period not exceeding 15 days, or the suspension of privileges of a member's right to sit in the legislature's debates or committees for a period not exceeding 15 days. What is meant by ethics? I think we've spoken about that. I'll just go to the issue of the codes of ethics, which are needed to continuously maintain good moral ethics standards. Integrity, integrity, integrity. Objectivity. What does objectivity mean? Not to look at yourself. I mean, objectivity sometimes it's itself, it's subjective. Objectivity is always to act in the interest of, other people. Professional competency and due care. Tetemabuso spoke about the issue of professional competency. Confidentiality. As the Integrity Commissioner, I sign an oath of confidentiality. The staff in my office signs that. Members of the committee also signs that. So it's very important that I think in your capacities also you sign that, because what you discuss, you tend to discuss sensitive things in council and in your various responsibilities. And you don't want to be hearing these matters outside of your trade. So the issue of confidentiality is very important. And the issue of professional behavior, you belong to a certain, people belong to certain professional bodies, and it is the responsibility of that professional body to take action once you have been found wanting in terms of how you behave, because you don't want to put or to bring that profession into disrepute. Ethical behavior, we have said that it's doing right and not wrong, being fair and not unfair, doing good and not bad, being responsible, being honest, considering the interest of others, formalized or known professional standards, withstanding negative influence. I think we live in a world where there's always negative influence, but when you are ethical, you know you are guided by your values, you know that is that inside moral compass that will always guide you, so you will be able to withstand that negative influence. Conducting oneself in a manner that upholds moral principles and values. When we define ethical leadership, Dr. Miles Monroe, in his book titled The Power of Character in Leadership, asserts that the most valuable component of leadership is not power, it is not position, it is not the influence that you hold, it is not your intellectual superiority or academic achievements, but your moral character. That is why we always talk about what? Integrity. He further asserts that moral character is the cradle of credibility and integrity. This is my own emphasis of an effective leader. It is against this background that he holds the view that the downfall of powerful, competent and skilled leaders is due to the lack of the quality of moral force and character, credibility and integrity. He believes that having a foundation of ethics is fundamental to the success and longevity of one's leadership. Leadership is defined by how well you lead a team into the goals and objectives set by you, buy-in and also leading by example. The following are, amongst others, listed as qualities of leadership. Communication. You need to be able to communicate clearly what you expect of your followers. Emotional intelligence. A lot of people lack emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is tact, knowing when to say whatever it is that you need to say and how to say it. You know, it's also about not wanting to be right at all costs. That is emotional intelligence. Confidence in what you are doing. We've spoken about competence. If you are not competent about what you are doing, the confidence will not be there, so you will not be ethical in what you do. That is why you will want to be surrounded by yes people. People should not disagree with you because you don't have the content of what you are doing. So what do? You intimidate others into always agreeing with you. Integrity, trustworthiness, being decisive. Being decisive, it means being able to make decisions and pronounce those decisions and stand by those decisions. Decisions are not necessarily supposed to be right all the time, but you need to take and make decisions. That is the role of yours as a leader. And obviously being honest. King 4 takes leadership to a higher level and talks about ethical and effective leadership, impactful leadership. This is the leadership I imagine we all aspire for, and more specifically for elected public officials and representatives. King 4 includes responsibility and accountability as qualities of ethical and effective leadership. You cannot not want to account for your actions if you are a leader. You need to explain why you take certain decisions, what informs those decisions, and what you have done with the programs that you have adopted. That is accountability, and that's being an effective leader. Ethical leaders conduct themselves according to a set of principles and values that are recognized by the majority, that is society, as a sound basis for the common good. The values and principles include integrity, respect, trust, fairness, transparency, responsibility, accountability, being competent, and being honest. Effective leaders are competent, skilled, secure, and considerate. They are genuine and they are authentic. They possess self-awareness. You know what you are able to do. You know what you are capable of. You know your limitations. And when you know your limitations, what do? You empower yourself. You hire people with the credibility. You hire people with the skills that will empower you, that will make sure that the programs within your department succeed. You focus on relationship building. You exhibit humility. A lot of powerful people, a lot of leaders think humility is what is weakness. Humility is not a weakness, it's a virtue, it's a value that we need to possess. Present themselves as firm, fair, honest, and consistent. You need to be consistent. When you say this is how we are going to be doing things, it does not have to be looked at because you wear a color of a t-shirt that looks like mine, or a color of a t-shirt that looks like the speaker or the deputy speaker or whoever is in authority. But you need to be consistent. True is true, false is false. That is what we mean by being consistent. Van Malan and Ben Smith, in their book Ethics and Leadership in Business and Politics, said that one of the fundamental challenges society needs to address is the flawed personal morality of leadership, which fails to provide the proper moral guidance a leader needs, and that is to lead ethically and with integrity. Ethical leaders' conduct should embody the values of our constitutional democracy. It is expected that leaders should lead by example and set the ethical tone from the top, walk the talk. It is an undisputed fact that the public expect of leaders in all spheres, political, public, and private, to conduct themselves ethically and with integrity, therefore adhering to the values, strategies, policies, and law as that they expect the rest of the public to adhere to. They say people do as they see, not as you tell them. Monkey see, monkey do. How elected representatives conduct themselves in public and in their private lives manifests as a frame of reference in the public sphere. Therefore, the ethical foundation laid in the Code of Conduct defines moral and ethical boundaries in the conduct of elected representatives. Speaker, I assume that you have a Code of Conduct and it has been adopted and there is somebody monitoring its implementation, the Integrity Commissioner. There is a belief that before a leader can lead, they must assess and understand their own positioning, as well as what such positioning implies about their ability to lead ethically and effectively. The principle of know thyself. In order to know thyself, one needs to do some introspection. I spoke earlier about self-awareness as one of the qualities of a leader. The belief goes further to assert that a leader's first ethical obligation is to assess their inner positioning as honestly as possible, measuring the inner positioning against the values and norms discussed above. In doing this, leaders are able to understand what makes them tick and therefore make calls in their lives guided by their inner moral compass. Okay, let me go to the last slide. In conclusion, ethical leadership is characterized by respect for others, acting ethically and setting the standard for others to act ethically too, and holding each other accountable to uphold the set ethical standard. As councillors and as public representatives, you are held in high esteem by the public, who are the electorates. It is therefore important as honorable members to conduct and uphold the decorum of council at all times and to engage with civility and humility. Your title doesn't make you a leader. These are the 6 things that do: your vision, your integrity, your actions, your empathy, your communication, and your accountability. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mashiko, for that enlightening talk. I think it is safe to say that after listening to you, we are all rethinking our promises and maybe a few New Year's resolutions too. Now we are about to dive into the academic side of ethical leadership. And I'm pleased to invite Prof. Hott from University of Johannesburg, who is a respected thought leader in the field of ethics and integrity management, to share with us insights on ethical leadership from an academic perspective. And I must say that as the city, we are looking forward to ongoing collaboration with academia to guide us in the challenging journey of ethics and integrity management, to ensure that what we start here today continues along after the event. Ladies and gentlemen, Abraham Lincoln says, and I quote, "Commitment is what transforms a promise into reality." Commitment is what transforms a promise into reality. Unquote. And that is exactly what we are aiming for today. Not just an event, but a sustained effort to embed ethical governance into everything we do. Let us welcome the Prof on stage. And you have less than 20 minutes, Prof.
How will I do so?
Professors are very good at summarizing.
All right. I think number one, let's rise. Let's stand up. Because you've sat so long. Yeah. Before I greet you guys, I think it's important. And now you turn to somebody and you say, "Well, I'm enjoying this." And even if you lie at the moment. All right. Stretch your legs for a moment and then please be seated. I wish I had the ability to address you guys in a way that the previous speakers have done. All I can say, I've got the utmost respect for you guys who are here. You are the dignitaries, you are the leaders of the city, and the leaders in Gauteng, and it's going to make a difference. Now, let's look each other in the eye. Okay, so you can put on my slides, please. Let us look each other in the eye. And you know what? If we're going to do nothing about today and leave today and have a nice lunch or dinner and say, "Wow, phew," and you go back to your office tomorrow and nothing changes, then you're in trouble. Then you're in trouble. Then you've wasted your time. Why have you been there? Why have you been here? You youngsters, you have been applauded today. I would think I was made of gold at the present moment, if I were in your case. But tomorrow you're going back to your schools. And that's where the fundamental change must happen. And you are the bearers of that change. Now, the interesting thing is, what is integrity? Usually I'm asked this, and I've got a very, very simple definition for that. And ma'am, I think you alluded to that. Integrity is walking the talk. Walking the talk. Since my engagement with Advocate Ntebo, I had to change a few things in my life. Because now, what I preach must be in my feet. So what you do is part of that. So can I please get my slideshow on? Because there's something I want to ask you. I'm going to make an opening statement. Okay, I've already opened. Wisdom literature, one of the most cleverest people that ever lived, and his name is Solomon. And Solomon said the following, he said, "For as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." We as speakers can try and give you wonderful information, but if your heart does not change, then you're in trouble. Now you would say, in leadership and in integrity and in ethics, what does heart have to do with it? Everything. Pearsall did information on that, and he said that the electromagnetic energy that's from the heart is 60 times stronger than that of the brain. 60 times. Your heart emits energy, and you're influencing people. Not just by your thought patterns, but what's going on in your heart. If your heart is corrupt, corruption will be the fruit thereof. Your mind must change, but your heart must make a serious change. And I'm not just talking to you, I'm talking to me, and I'm talking to the citizens of our beautiful, beautiful city. We need to make that change. Now, my opening slide, see, it's still battling there. My opening slide says the following. What is the most important 30 centimeters in your life? Now, please. Watch what you're thinking now. I can see it in your eyes. What's the most important 30 centimeters in your life? And now I'm going to ask anybody, but if it's pervasive, you don't answer me. Anybody who wants to take a jab at this spot? Most important 30 centimeters. Yes, sir. Your brain. But what about your brain? It's not 30 centimeters. I don't know about you, but it's 1.5 kilograms, 70% water, but that's about the importance thereof. What about it? You've got part of the answer. Okay, no problem, but you got 50% of it. Anybody wants to add to that? He's put you on track. Okay, now we're even getting better and closer. The most important 30 centimeters is the 30 centimeters from your brain to your heart. Those two aspects must link up. If they do not link up, then you're half a person. Your decision making and integrity and ethics is not just sitting in a room full of wonderful people and with wonderful dignitaries that I now have the privilege to have met. It's not about that. It's about connecting this with this. Then we can influence our citizens. Then our schools will change. Then our people will change. I live in Melville, and I love Melville. I've been living there for, I think it's now approximately 15 years. You know what? The business people know me. But you know who knows me the best? The guys on the street. Why? Because they need love. They need ethical and integral behavior, if there's such a word. When I drive with my truck, now a taxi hit me and took part of my truck away. on the right-hand side, even when I was stationary. And I was fed up, must tell you. And you know what happened? Everybody knows my truck. And they ran to the scene and said, "Are you all right? Albert, are you all right?" I said, "I'm all right. Saved by grace." Now, I see the slides are still not. Let me just get to my cell phone. I've got my presentation on here. And that I see that I keep up with what I want to say and finish up when you want to, Mr. Program Manager. Right. Viktor Frankl aligned. Let's go to the next slide, please. Please. Viktor Frankl, no, go back. He said, and his statement aligns with that of Friedrich Nietzsche. He said, if you have a why to live for, you can almost bear anyhow. If we, through integrity and ethical behavior, can create a why for our people, then this country will change, and not only Gauteng. Then Gauteng and Joburg will become the lighthouses of the country. And never mind the country, the world. And we need to ask ourselves, how serious are we about this business of ethics? I forgot about something that I wanted to say. The thing that drives integrity and ethics is authenticity. Authenticity. Ma'am, and you refer to that. You know what authentic is? Let me give you a simple example. My late dad, he loved traveling, and he went to, I think it was Taiwan or Bangkok. It's one of those places. And he came back with his gold watch, Rolex. And I asked him, "Dad, how much did you pay for it?" Now, that day, 100 rand was a lot of money. He said, 100 rand. I said, "Yeah, but still, it's not enough for this watch." He said, "No, man, good one. Goodbye." And yes, goodbye. 3 weeks later, goodbye. The watch stopped working. Why? Because the inside of the watch is not Rolex. And you can mimic anything. But if the inside of what you're carrying is not a Rolex, sorry, it's going to be goodbye. And if we live with that authenticity, then we will be able to change not just ourselves, but the people around us. I've got a saying. I'm going to say it in Afrikaans, and now I'm going to interpret it. I usually say, "Hoor jy my hart? Do you hear my heart?" And I don't mean about the beating of my heart. Are you hearing my heart? Because this is the fundamentals of ethics and integrity. This is fundamentals. Give me the next slide. The question is, what is your leadership stance? And I developed this following model. You can go to the next slide. There you are. I call it the integrity leadership triad stance. And I developed it within the different leadership stances. And let's start here at the bottom. Transactional. It's about efficiency. And you know what? The problem that we have is that too much we just go about efficiency. And it's a contractual thing. That's what transactions is. I'm making a transaction with you. And you can take a photo of this. There are wonderful videos on YouTube with regard to this. And this is about the how. But then I get to transformational on that side. And transformational is about my vision and my values. Now here is what makes it so important. If you do not carry the correct values, your behavior is going to be influenced, because values drives behavior. So academic, no. Everybody knows that in the academic. Values drives behavior. And even more, your beliefs within that values. What is your belief about people? What is your belief about people? Are they just objects through which you are attaining certain goals? Or are you actually serious about it? And that brings me to the last one. And that's where us as leaders and leadership of this Gauteng province should be transcendental. A transcendental leadership stance means I am searching towards giving you a greater purpose and meaning in life. Then I have a greater meaning and purpose. Now here is what the important of this is. Meaning and purpose relate 100% to a highest level of leadership, and it's called spiritual leadership. I'm not talking about you going to church. That's your case. Spiritual leadership is about how am I experiencing my meaning and my purpose. Ask yourself, in your workspace, do you experience that? Oh, you say, well, you know what, Albert, that's at least a good pay, huh? Then pack up your stuff and go. Because you will become toxic in the lives of others. And you will become toxic in leadership. You can go to the next slide. I want to, before the program manager hits me from the side with this tab of him, my question to you, how do we want to attain leadership integrity and ethics that will leave a legacy? Because we have, for the whole day, spoken about ethics and integrity. But where's legacy? Through our behavior, we need to leave a legacy. Ma'am, 5 years, 10 years after your tenure, people should still talk about you because of what you have done. Go to the next slide, please. In layman's terms, how do we as citizens take hands and let integrity and ethics be the difference? And I'm going to quickly run now because I want to get to the program specific. Go next slide. Yeah, we spoke about this. Go next slide. Go next slide. I've already given you this. Okay. There are 5 critical factors. And when we're going to do the training, these are the critical factors. It is researched and practically validated. So, I did my research in a mining house, a big gold mining house called Harmony Gold. And out of the research over a period of 3 years, it came forth that there are, initially it was 4 critical factors in terms of leadership, and I want to link this to ethical behavior, because most of those words on the screen has been mentioned by previous speakers. So once again, it's validated within another context. So, what the research shown, and this is the critical factor, and we do not do it. Character. It's doing the right thing for the right reason at the right time. And changing yourself. And what we saw in the research is that as soon as character is addressed and developed, the people start coming to a next level and they say, but I want to learn how to care more. And it's not just kumbaya feeling, sitting around the fire and caring. It's caring about your people that's with you and caring for the vision and the values of your company. And in this case, the vision and the values that you as leaders are carrying. After that has happened, something very interesting happened. They said, make us more competent. We want to be more competent towards doing this. And then the company came and they gave them competencies. And then the thing happened what most companies want. Committed people. Committed people. And then the next phase of my research was where I validated the concept of connectedness within this whole model. So you can go on to the next slide. I'm going to skip this one model. Yeah, this is a wonderful model, but it's going to take too much time to explain it. A very, very nice and complex one. Right. What will we do? Sorry, I see that there's a overlapping. What I will do with you and everybody that is sent to me, the first thing is profiling. I'm going to show you who you are. I'm going to do a brain profile test. So you're going to learn exactly who you are. And the profiling that I do is within the neurochemical balances of the brain as well. So you will understand why you have certain behaviors. One of the reasons I cannot stand behind a pulpit is my dopamine is too high. I'm too energetic. So that explains me. The second one, then there will be a program roll out in assisting you within this context. Then the third thing that will happen is a coaching program in strengthening your core aspects in leadership towards integrity and greater ethical behavior. The fourth one, to have a journey with you, not just towards integrity and ethics, but towards a greater understanding of yourself within the 5 C's: character, caring, competence, commitment, and connectedness. I think we can go to the last slide. I think it's the last one. Yes. So, yes, sir. I'm finished. Thank you very much.
This is yours.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Prof, on that informative presentation on ethical leadership from an academic perspective. And what I've learned is that values drive behavior. Values drive behavior. And the second one is that if we have some level of authenticity, we are well positioned to change or transform the country and by default the world. Thank you, Prof, for that. I think we are all living here today a little wiser and maybe with some homework to do on our own in relation to the ethical practices. Next, we have Dr. Solomon Vermaak from the Department of Public Services and Administration. The doc is the head of the Public Administration Ethics, Integrity and Disciplinary Technical Assistance Unit, a Chief Directorate in the DPSA. His unit is mandated to develop norms and standards on ethics, integrity, conduct, and discipline management, provide technical assistance, build capacity around discipline management, strengthening oversight, and promote good ethics and integrity across the administration. Now we talk about ethics. It is funny how everyone always nods along, but as soon as we have to apply them, it becomes a bit more of a challenge. And that is the fact. But Dr. Verman will tell you, managing ethics is not just about rules. It is about creating a culture where the right thing is the norm, not the exception. Please join me in welcoming Doc.
Let me start by acknowledging the Honourable Executive Mayor, the Speaker of Council, also the Chair of Chairs, the councillors, and also in absentia, my previous Minister for Public Service and Administration. And let me finish by saying all protocols observed, because I'm not always that au fait with the municipal protocols, so I don't want to offend anyone in that regard. I was asked to look at, or to give a brief introduction on the work that this unit is doing, but link that to the practical side of how do you manage ethics in the public service. And I think up to now, I'm really fortunate that I'm at the end, because a lot of speakers already framed what I'm going to talk about, where we had Commissioner Mavuso explaining the legislative framework, referring to the unit, saying all the things that needs to be done. We have also academic input on how do you as an individual contribute. And mine will be more on how do you now apply all of this in an organization, because we're talking not about only ethics, but we're talking about professional ethics, meaning how you are acting in professional circumstances or professional setup where you are a worker and working with other people, and you have commitments in terms of your performance agreement and that. So you can move to the next slide. In that sense, I want to first of all agree with what former Minister Sisulu said, that I was in the DPSA at that time when there was a real fight about do you include corruption or not. And we have a lot of corruption fighting bodies. I mean, SIU is one, Hawks, a lot of them. So do you really need another one from an administrative point of view? And at that sense, or at that time, it was then decided, let's focus on the ethical part. And I'm really very happy. I agree with what the minister said at the end, because that is the things that make everything else fall in place. If you start focusing on the ethics part, first of all. So in, I think it's the previous one. No, it's this one. You're quite right. On the 18th of September, or 18th of March, 2019, the President proclaimed the establishment of this unit with a long name. When it was COVID time, every morning I said the name and then my surname so that I know I am still fine. But it's the Public Administration, Ethics, Integrity and Disciplinary Technical Assistance Unit, which we then call TAU for short. So this unit is exclusively focusing on ethics, integrity, conduct, and discipline management in the public administration, which includes the national, provincial, and local. And as such, we provide the framework for departments in order to manage and execute their own ethics programs to say this is the minimum that you need to comply with. Of course, we cannot tailor-make it so that it suits one department, but it must work across the public administration for all departments. So you can briefly move to the next slide, where I think this has already been covered by the MC, where it indicates the functions of this unit in terms of the Public Administration Management Act. You will see the three things that come up the whole time is ethics, integrity, and discipline management. And in the mix, also anti-corruption. So it's to provide technical assistance and support, to set norms and standards, to build capacity, to strengthen oversight, to promote and enhance good ethics, integrity, and the most important one, to cooperate. And I think that is where the connectedness also come in from what Prof. Bort indicated, that you cannot only be caring and all that, but you're not connected with the other stakeholders that also has a role to play and that can help you to make this journey easier. So the next slide, you can just quickly move over, because that is just the organogram. Let me just move that away before I fall on that. It's possible. It happened before. So this is exactly why this unit is created. You will see here that we have a responsibility as this unit under the medium-term development plan, a capable ethical developmental state, to look at two priorities, two very important things. And these things are actually interchanging or influencing one another. The one is to build an ethical public administration, and I put it first because I think that is where former Minister Sisulu is also correct. If you fix that, the ethics part, the rest falls in place. But you cannot let slip aside the corruption part, the corruption focus. But if you put your energy, 80%, on the ethics side, you have less work to do on the corruption side. And I take it also from my own family. If I leave my children to run amok and break doors and break cups and break hearts and all that, and you don't rein them in and say somewhere, listen, you need to stop somewhere. There are some rules, there are some consequences, and you address that behavior, it will just continue. And it's the same with organizations. If you have your norms and standards in place, everyone knows what they have to do. It's much easier to work on getting people so that they don't fall into the trap of becoming corrupt, because you don't give them that space to do that. Now, the next slide, you will see the practical work that we do around how do you put now the ethics into a person's heart and link it to the brain. And the linking to the brain sometimes is that little pat on the bum for your children to say, listen, concentrate. Not by killing them, but by just linking the heart and the brain so that they understand. Now, the ethics, the work that we do is to build an ethics, ethical public service. And the first thing that you need to do is to get the norms and standards in place. You cannot have one set of rules for the one and another set of rules for others. You cannot have one set of rules in one department and for another department it changes. You confuse people. Same in a house. You cannot tell your 12-year-old, you can come home tonight 12 o'clock, it's fine. And the 10-year-old, you say, okay, you don't even have to come home. Because then they sometimes you wish. But you cannot do that because you're sending conflicting messages. So your communication must be very clear in terms of this is the rules. And then you need to enforce it. You cannot backtrack on it. Or say, because it's you, now we leave it. But don't do it again. People see. And then you erase the link between the brain and the heart. Because why would you do it? So If you do that, and you have an ethics infrastructure to support public servants or public administration servants, then you can start to institutionalize. Meaning, you must have an ethics committee that does all the strategic work, looking at what is the gaps, what do you need to comply with, what is the areas that you need to focus on to drive the whole organization to one point. But you also need to have an ethics officer or some or other similar infrastructure to assist the public servants or the public administrators when they are unsure, to interpret the legislation for them or the rules because they're not sure. Most of the time, when people do things wrong, it's because they didn't know. And the moment that you overreact to it, you make it worse. By rather explaining to them why, what is the rationale behind it, why is it seen as wrong, then you engage with the person and you start to change things so that you get everyone on board on the same page. Here you will see that is the ethics management model that we use across South Africa, even in the private sector. If you want to institutionalize ethics, you need to have some office that runs it. And they they conduct ethics risk assessments where they find out what's the opportunities and the risks. Not only the risks, opportunities as well. And then you compile the strategy, then you develop the code of ethics or the code of policies, then you institutionalize and you monitor and report. So it's a recipe that you follow. So most of the time we think ethics is extremely complex and very abstract. We will never reach that. But if you follow the process, you will quickly see that there is actually a method in madness, and then you can track it every 3 years to see whether you are on track or not with changing behavior. The next slide, I just want to quickly show you the guides, and I know that the Public Service Commission also are very good in this, where we have guides that we developed in terms of the public service and administration, where you find that the employees are struggling with something, and you keep quiet and you don't issue a guide, you're complicit, because you know there's something wrong, and you do nothing about it. So you need to support them. You can say these are the house rules. You cannot come later than 12 o'clock. But if you don't stand at the door and tap on your watch 10 minutes past 12 and you explain why you are now in trouble, then it has no effect. You must have the guides to tell people, when can you accept a gift? When is a gift a bribe? What's the difference between a gift and what's the difference between a gift and a bribe? Because it's easy to get into trouble thinking you are receiving a gift and then only later on finding out it was not a gift. It was actually an attempt to bribe me. And now you have to explain to court why you have taken this gift that you thought was a gift. So those are the type of guides that one has to have in place. You can move to the next one. You also need to speak to the employees to make them aware of what is it that you want them to do and the roles, the regulations and the rules that you have. And here, it's very important. In the public service, there's always this fight, but whose culture are we following? There is no culture that you follow. You follow the public service regulation culture. It's determined by the minister. So you have no, I cannot come and say, I want this or this or this because that is who I am. It's not about me. You are part of a bigger group and you need to facilitate the broader group. And the culture is determined by the regulations that you have in place that you want to see in practice. So you focus on training, interventions. We have a lot of training on the ethics committees to make people understand why we have a code of conduct, why is it necessary. We also have a lot of training on lifestyle audits, the reviews and the investigations. We have a lot of training on discipline management to make people understand why it's necessary for them to follow the rules. And then we also have awareness sessions like the pledges. And it is not only symbolic, it has a much broader application that when you sign there, your brain and your heart must be linked at that moment to realize that I'm doing this in the open where everyone sees, and this is my commitment so that I will really be held accountable whenever they find that there's something wrong. So it is, sometimes the ethics things are accused of being very soft issues, but it's not. It's actually the hard issues. So the next slide is the setting of norms and standards. You have to be firm and clear on what you want. So in the norms and standards, what we've done in the public service regulations, you very clearly indicate the road marks for the public servants to say, this is what we will tolerate and this is what we won't tolerate. So it's the same than inviting a person to a party. You don't say what dress code. You come there with a tuxedo and it's a beach party. You miss out on all the fun. The same here, you must be very clear. Gifts is this. This is what we mean with a gift. You cannot conduct other remunerative work if you don't ask permission, because we want to see if it's impacting on your performance. You cannot conduct business with the state if you're a public servant, because it's double dipping, and you're also not getting to your own work. So you must explain that to people. And then we will hold one another accountable. But if we talk about these concepts and you don't explain it, no one else can say to this one that, yeah, are you not conducting business with the state now? Because you don't have the vocabulary to explain what the person is actually doing. So the same with lifestyle audits, the same with reporting. There's an obligation on public servants to report when they see things are wrong. It's an obligation in terms of the public service regulations. But that also means that there's an obligation on the departments to protect the people who then go and blow the whistle. Because you can't only expect it from one side. You must then also be ethical and protect those individuals who want to blow the whistle. So moving to the next slide, what we do is, if you now set the rules, you set the norms and standards, in my house we will do this, you're too young to go out after 8, and I want preferably to drop you myself, that I can see where you are, and I will fetch you then after I've met the mother and the father and all these things. Then you set now the rules and the standards of your family. But now you must go further. You can't then disappear from the house and not see when the person comes back, or not go and drop him and send an Uber, because you create confusion. So the monitoring is also important, the monitoring, the evaluation and the interventions. And this is where we now, as the unit, we have systems in place to see who is doing business with the state, so that we can write to those departments and say, these members are possibly doing business with the state, investigate and see, so that we can rectify the behavior. If you leave it in your department, others will find out and they will soon do the same. Because why can one person do it and I cannot? It's a human nature. We do that. So the other thing is performing other remunerative work. You know that you must do it before you start with the work. So there's very creative ways how people want to come later on and say, but this, it just landed on my lap. I didn't look for it, and all these. If you're in the public service, your primary responsibility is the public, not other things. So you must be very careful when you think about how you want to extend yourself into that area as well. And then monitoring discipline management. We do monitor that to see if people are actually taking action against those who need to be disciplined, but also if there's suspensions, because sometimes these suspensions are not honest. It's a warfare almost, one can say, between people that clash, and soon people are suspended and all these, and it escalates. It kills the culture of an organization if it's not done properly. So we monitor and look at that as well. We have National Ethics Officer Forum once a year, and also a Labour Relations Forum, where we get these ethics officers involved and take stock of what have we done for the year, what do we need to focus on, what do we need to improve, and what do we need to change. So the last slide is about then corruption. And I deliberately kept it very short because I think the exciting work lies with the ethics work. That's the work where you can still change the person to say that, listen, you're on track, let us take hands, let us move on, let us all work together as a team. The part that you come to the corruption part, it's too late. And I remember 20 years ago when I was in the NPA, when they established the NPA, they got now recruitment applications, and they were horrified to find out that most of the people who apply were actually convicts and hardcore criminals who want to get into the system and cozy themselves so that they can manipulate the systems. And that was long ago. So it shows you that if you don't have the mechanisms in place, you will attract the wrong people. You need to have filters in place to get rid of those that doesn't have a place in this environment. And then when those are in, you need to take care of them. And you need to capacitate them, you need to give them resources, but you also need to give them guidance, leadership, so that they can also then, at the end of the day, feel they belong, and they will then respond to the ethics requirements of the department. So by the time you get here to addressing corruption, that is where I really already lost hope. Because now the person is already, and most of these things start so innocent, where a person just couldn't say no, then he did something wrong, especially if it's a senior that says, no, change this contract and put this in and that. Now, how do you say now no to the head? So then you think, maybe once, let me do it once, because I'm still acting. I'm not permanently employed. Then what happens is you are controlled in, slowly but surely. The next time, you cannot say no, because then they already have evidence on you to say that this is now problematic. This is how it starts, so that at the end of the day, you are fully fledged part of this corruption problem, which you did not sign up for in the beginning. So we need to fix the ethics part so that we don't get to this part, and tell people that if you say no, it must be for the right reasons, and then you must be brave enough to say even no to the supervisor, that this is not right. So we work very close with the law enforcement agency. We're not a law enforcement agency, not at all. We cannot arrest, we cannot prosecute, nothing of that, but we liaise very close with the SIU. We rope them in to assist us with a review process for lifestyle audits that we're doing. If there is a repeated pattern of not complying with lifestyle audits to conduct it per year, we also speak to the SIU and say, let us see what is your landscape, what it looks like in ours, and if there is commonalities of certain departments that keeps coming up and that needs to be looked at. We also work with the SAPs and the NPA for those employees who's conducting business with the state. We screen the central supplier database. We know if you paid by BAS. So then you flagged, and we immediately refer you to your department, say, open a criminal case. Because under the Public Administration Management Act, Section 8, it's a criminal offense. So already 8 people in the public service lost their work because they conducted business with the state. So, and the reason for it is because you cannot have a job, get a salary, and then now you run side businesses and you use government's equipment and government's contacts now to supplement your income. It can't be fair to people out there in the provinces, especially in the beginning when it was flagged, where government officials would actually run the office as if it's their business and channel all the business to them and their businesses. So, but that's now long ago, it's not now. So then we also part of the anti-corruption task team, where we work with the Financial Intelligence Center, we work with the AGSA, we also work with the Electoral Committee, where we track those councillors that do not have permission and then get elected, and it becomes problematic. So all of those work it's good and it has a place, but I think if one really wants to be proactive, start with the ethics work, so that you don't need to get to this stage where you need to put people in orange jumpsuits and ruin their careers, their family, and ruin themselves. So thank you very much. I think this one is mine.
Thank you so much, Doc, for those valuable insights into managing ethics in the public service. I've learned the following. Culture is regulated by legal framework that has been put in place, not the other way around. Two, as senior officials and the leadership of the city, we ought to set the rules and standards, but clearly communicate them. Thank you. Thank you, Doc. It is clear that ethics is not just a tick box exercise, but a continuous commitment. And speaking of commitment, the next part of our program is both significant and historic. We are about to witness a first of its kind event in the city of Johannesburg, where our key leadership will publicly commit to upholding ethical standards. It has never happened before. This pledge signing is not just a symbolic gesture. It is a formal public promise that is setting the tone for the years to come, so that we can bequeath ethical legacy to the next generation. Therefore, the order will be as follows. The speaker will read the pledge and thereafter sign the pledge, followed by the executive mayor. I am hopeful that these pledges that are being signed here today are not just going to another decoration in the office halls. They are going to be constant reminders as we enter our respective offices on a daily basis, especially when the temptation to do wrongs starts visiting our minds. These pledges will be like that motivational poster in the gym. And just as our top leadership, the legislature and the head of the executive, sets the tone today, Madam Speaker, all employees will also be expected to sign their own pledges. And that process is managed and facilitated by GCSS. That will ensure that we reinforce this commitment across the entire city and its entities. Without further delay, let us proceed with this important moment. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome the Speaker of Council to begin the pledge signing.
This is a big. I, Nobuhle Mthembu, in my capacity as the City of Johannesburg Speaker, commit to this pledge. Represent with honor, serve the people of Johannesburg with honor, ensuring that my actions and decisions reflect the collective interest of the community. Engage the community actively engage with constituencies, listening to their needs and concerns, and advocating on their behalf with transparency and dedication. Make informed decisions. Base my decisions on accurate information, thoughtful analysis, and the long-term welfare of all residents. Maintain accountability. Be accountable to the people I represent, providing regular updates and being open to feedback and scrutiny. Support democratic values. Uphold the democratic values of fairness, equality, and respect, ensuring that all voices are heard and considered. Promote ethical leadership. Lead by example in an ethical conduct, inspiring trust and confidence through my actions and decisions. Collaborate effectively. Work collaboratively with fellow councillors and city officials to achieve common goals, putting aside personal differences for the city's benefit. Focus on service delivery. Prioritize efficient and effective service delivery, striving to enhance the quality of life for all residents. This pledge is my promise to uphold the responsibilities entrusted to me and to contribute positively to the governance and prosperity of the city of Johannesburg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for leading the way and putting pen to paper. This is one solid step towards making sure no one in the room ever gets away with the saying, "I didn't get the memo." The head of the legislature has pledged, and everyone is expected to follow suit. Now it is time for the Executive Mayor to make his commitment. Please join me in welcoming the Executive Mayor of the City of Johannesburg to sign the pledge.
I, Silo Morero, in my capacity as the City of Johannesburg Executive Mayor, commit to this pledge. 1, represent with honor, serve the people of Johannesburg with honor, ensuring that my actions and decisions reflect the collective interests of the community. Engage the community, actively engage with constituents, listening to their needs and concerns, and advocating on their behalf with transparency and dedication. Make informed decisions. Base my decisions on accurate information, thoughtful analysis, and long-term welfare of all residents. Maintain accountability. Be accountable to the people I represent, providing regular updates and being open to feedback and scrutiny. Support democratic values. Uphold the democratic values of fairness, equality, and respect, ensuring that all voices are heard and considered. Promote ethical leadership. Lead by example in ethical conduct, inspiring trust and confidence through my actions and decisions. Collaborate effectively. Work collaboratively with fellow councillors and city officials to achieve common goals, putting aside personal differences for the city's benefit. Focus on service delivery. Prioritize efficient and effective service delivery, striving to enhance the quality of life of all residents. This pledge is my promise to uphold the responsibilities entrusted to me and to contribute positively to the governance and prosperity of the city of Johannesburg. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Mayor, for your commitment. With your signature, we have added a serious level of authority to this document. Now I'm going to request the Integrity Office Commissioner, the Acting Ethics Officer in the city, Mr. Ernest Mutenda, to join the stage for a photo shoot with the Executive Mayor and the Speaker to Council. A photo shoot with... Thank you. As we come to the end of this program, and before I invite the last speaker to the podium, by the way, who's going to give a vote of thanks, let me leave you with a thought that resonates deeply with today's theme. An author called Ahmad Bak once said, and I quote, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." I'll repeat it. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Today's event and the pledges that have been signed by our top leadership are our commitment as a city that we will not sit back in silence. We'll stand up for what is right and uphold the ethical standards that will shape a better, more just future, and not just for ourselves, but for the generations to come. Our actions here today, as displayed by the Executive Mayor and the Speaker, are about leaving a legacy of integrity and responsibility for our children and those who will follow in our footsteps. With that said, it is my pleasure to invite the Secretary to Council of the City of Johannesburg, Mr. Andile Kobinga, to deliver the vote of thanks. And
thank you, Mr. Kona, Program Director. And obviously, I would have to acknowledge our leadership and also giving gratitude to their commitment as well, starting off with yourself, Executive Mayor. I also acknowledge yourself, Madam Speaker, Whip of Council, Chair of Chairs, chairpersons and councillors, and also officials and senior officials, guests, and also other guests from other institutions that have joined us. In fact, I wanted to actually put up a 50-page slide, but I see that the item I'm on does not allow. However, I think it's very important to conclude on a note that leadership in government cannot be overstated, Executive Mayor and Speaker of Council. And we will also be joining as well in that commitment because it has to run down to us, Mr. Kona, as well, so that we are able to also meet our leaders halfway in that commitment. And with that being said, as leaders, we have a profound, or should I say, a monumental responsibility to act in ways that reflect our commitment to transparency, our commitment to also the principles of good governance, and also to act in such a way then that embodies the principles of good governance and ethical conduct. And that would then include the integrity and also the transparency aspect of it, along with the rule of law. So with that being said, I would like to say then that in so doing, we need to do it in such a way that we are in full view of the relationship we have with our citizens, because that relationship is premised on trust and confidence that they have in us as the administration or as government. And obviously that trust, we need to nurture it and we need to improve on it continuously. So how we act and how we behave would reflect our efforts towards working towards that relationship. And I think it's a step forward that we are starting such initiatives. And one is hoping that we are not going to now say, I'm ethical today because it's Global Ethics Day. Tomorrow it's a different case. I'm hoping we will follow this through with also some of these internal training workshops and awareness programs that will also reach out to the broader part of our officials. But I would like to thank the leadership for the occasion, and also thanking everyone for joining us, including our former Minister, Sisulu, including also the speakers, guest speakers that have spoken here and imparted us with so much knowledge, and we give gratitude to such insights. And obviously the guests that have also come through to witness the occasion, we appreciate that, and also the support from our fellow colleagues. Not lastly to mention the support and the organizers of the event, and I understand this was done with the Integrity Commissioner in collaboration with the Ethics Office in the Governance Department, the Group Governance. Mr. Kona, thank you very much for the event and how you have coordinated the event. But now we've come to the end of the event, and we would like then to thank everyone for making time to come through. And we are hoping then that next time when we expand on this commemoration for this day, we will then be much more inclusive and be more dynamic in what we bring to commemorate this day. However, it shouldn't be a transactional process. This is an ongoing process, which I'm hoping then that we are all taking it within that stride. And we will also then show commitment thereof towards such behavior, especially in the workplace, where we need to also ensure that we have a way, Madam Speaker, that we can make this aspect of ethics more contagious, even in our own sectors, in our departments, in our own offices. And I would like to thank everyone. Thank you, Mr. Kona. I'm not sure if we are going for lunch or supper.
Thank you, Secretary to Council. I'm going to invite the IC in the city of Johannesburg to come forward and advise us where we're going to have our dinner. Secondly, to also hand over the token of appreciation that we have to the speaker and the presenters for today's session. And I can give you comfort, Doc, it's not a bribe at all. You are given in public. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. I will start with the token of appreciation. Judith, can you help me to hand over the token of appreciation to our speakers? If the speakers may come and in front so that they may accept their token of appreciation. Dr. from DPSA, Prof, it's not a gift, it's not a bribe, it's a token of appreciation. And yes, you must declare. Thank you, Judith. We are so grateful that you graced this event, and we are providing dinner, dinner at second floor, Sophia Boardroom. Sophia Town Boardroom, okay, I'm corrected. Sophia Town Boardroom at second floor. Siyabonga.